little bit past 4, and it looks like we've got a few folks who have joined us, so we can go ahead and get started. So thank you to everyone who hopped online today. Super excited to have our guest this weekend, Gianna Lum, who's the Executive Director of Climatepedia and also does a whole bunch of other really, really cool things. So I will turn it over to you, Gianna, to get started.
Thanks so much for having me. Let me just get my slides up real quick. Well, hi everyone, my name is Gianna Lum. I'm the director of a climate communications organization called Climatepedia, and I'm currently finishing up my master's in climate and society at Columbia University. So Climatepedia is a climate communications nonprofit founded by students. And right now I host a 12-week climate justice, climate science, and climate leadership certificate program. And I think I'll just share my little story with you of how I got involved with climate change and climate action first, because part of our program is about telling our story and why this is an issue that matters to us. So my story starts out when I was in 4th grade. My teacher, Miss Muser, came to our class one day and gave every single student a piece of paper with a black and white drawing of the earth. And she gave each of us a pack of markers and said, color the earth, make it really pretty and make it how you envision our planet. So if anyone knows me, I'm obsessed with the color purple. So at first I thought, maybe I'll just color the entire planet purple because I like purple. But then I thought, no, I'm gonna color it how it usually is with the beautiful blue waters and all the green trees. So I ended up drawing it more realistically and had a pretty marker drawing, and all the other 4th graders in my class did too. And once we were done coloring our planets and looking at each other's drawings, our teacher, Ms. Muser, gave us each a pair of scissors and said, now cut them. And we were shocked, like, we just made these pretty pictures, why would we cut our drawings? So we reluctantly cut along the dotted lines that they had on the picture and put them into a bunch of little pieces. And then after we were finished with that, our teacher said, this is what's happening to our planet right now. Our planet's being destroyed by human activity, but you have a chance to fix that. She taught us about climate change, what greenhouse gases we're doing, how our planet's warming, and said that every time you do something that's good for the planet, be it maybe if you walk to school, or if you change the light bulbs in your home, or conserve water in your home, you can put another piece back together and put your whole picture together like a puzzle. So ever since then, that pretty much became my goal, to piece our world back together. And that brings me into paleoclimate a little bit later. So my senior year of high school, I started applying for colleges. I decided to go to UC Irvine, that's the University of California, Irvine in Southern California, originally in environmental engineering, because I wanted to build something for the environment. Wasn't really sure what I was doing back then. But I got to freshman orientation and I looked at my schedule. And when I looked at that schedule, I was like, I don't like this. I wanted to do more of the environment and less of the engineering. And I went straight to the counselor and told them, I want to switch to a different major. I want more of a earth science focus. So they tried to talk me out of it, but they're okay, like, okay, fine, it's just orientation. You can switch out of this and here's your new schedule. So I ended up studying earth system science and then later on urban studies at UC Irvine. I got really into paleoclimatology and joined a lab, a geochemistry and paleoclimatology lab there. And paleoclimate is the study of past climate change. And I really liked that. It was kind of like being back as a kid, piecing pieces of a puzzle together. And what paleoclimatologists do is that they figure out from rocks or ice cores or corals or different paleoclimate proxies, different conditions around the world of what the climate looked like in the past. So specifically what I did was I worked with speleothems. Those are cave rocks in northeastern Mexico. And the graduate students were the ones that went to Mexico and like went in the cave and cut everything out from the cave for me to analyze. But it was my job to drill down every 0.5 millimeter of this lung rock here from Grutas de Catedral in Mexico. And every 0.5 millimeter was 11 years of history. So I could figure out, based on the content of the rock, we'd weigh them and put them through a mass spectrometer. I would see what the oxygen isotope ratios were. And depending on the ratios, I could determine if it was drier or wetter during that period of time, or what the temperature was like. And then after that, I correlated that to a bunch of other data sets around the world, from other cave rocks, or the insolation curve, that's the pattern of the sun over that period of time, or the ice core data from the Northern Greenland Ice Core Project. So that's a little bit of my research in undergrad. When I was doing that, I thought I really liked doing the research side of it, but I thought I wasn't really getting my hands into the social science issues and how humans are affected by climate change. So I ended up joining a club on campus called Climatepedia. There were actually only 2 other kids in the organization when I first started, and their goal was to spread awareness about climate change. So I really worked to make this a bigger organization. We had a lot of beach cleanups, panels. We had a big professor panel where we had people from different sectors talk about what it meant for the US to pull out of the Paris Agreement. And I really just liked communicating with people how everyone is part of the issue of climate change, but we're also all part of the solution. So towards my senior year of undergrad, I was looking into applying for PhD programs in atmospheric science. At first I thought I really wanted, not my senior year, my junior year, I thought I wanted to teach about climate change. I really liked that. And I thought the only route to do that was to be a professor. So I actually ended up getting into one PhD program and some other master's programs, but I also ended up applying to the Masters in Climate and Society at Columbia University. And I figured out that this was really a good match for me because I was into both the science side and the policy, social science, and solutions side. So I'm finishing up with that program right now. It's a really interdisciplinary program. We have like the physics and climate dynamics, and then we also have electives. So later I'll talk about my data sonification elective, where I've learned to turn some of this paleoclimate data and patterns with our past climate change into music to communicate that with the public. I think some of you might have been interested with my research at NASA when I was in grad school. I just finished that up in May. But I worked with Professor Kate Marvel at the Goddard Institute for Space Studies. And fun fact about NASA GISS, Tom's Restaurant is actually the restaurant that's in Seinfeld, but they changed the name for the show. But the NASA office is right on top there. And when I was doing research there, I processed climate models for drought projections. Really the data was all over the place. So I helped fix their code so that we could figure out the different variables for like soil moisture and everything that affects drought in the continental US. And we figured out what was natural with regards to drought and what we projected to see now that humans had an effect on climate change. So we were trying to figure out, like, since pre-industrial times, what were the patterns, and now what's unnatural variability in our climate. And then my professor right now is coordinating with the 5th National Climate Assessment to write reports on our climate models. So I'll take questions first about my research before we go into my climate communications work with Climatepedia. So Jenna, I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want people just to unmute?
Wow, sorry, yeah, I wasn't unmuted. Yeah, go ahead. If you guys have any questions, you can just go ahead and unmute your mic and ask Gianna. Okay, or you can hold on to your questions until the end. Goose has a question, but we'll get to that later. So I guess we can move on.
Okay, cool. So now most of my work, I've been focusing on a climate communications nonprofit called Climatepedia. It was a really small organization when I was an undergrad, and then we really grew it so that now we have 80 people around the world actually who are working on climate communications and teaching their communities about climate science, climate justice, climate solutions, and climate policies. And the reason why we have this program is because only 42% of adults in the US actually think that global warming will harm them personally. And we think it really needs to be a personal issue for humans to take more action on it. And they also, only 67% of adults think that global warming will harm future generations. And most of them really don't think it's a problem for right now. And that disconnect with the urgency of climate change is also problematic, that we wanna have people really understand that we need to be taking action now. So our mission as an organization is to simply communicate how our changing climate impacts people and their communities. And I'll go into why we want to really have it on a community level or a values level when talking about climate change, and not just like the facts and figures. So one of the things that we have right now is a petition called the Tyndall Petition. And we have about 700 professors and climate experts, not necessarily climate scientists, but we have some anthropologists, some economists, some lawyers, anyone who's done some research though in climate change and has a PhD. They've all signed this petition to say that climate change is real, humans are causing it, and we need to act now to mitigate the effects of climate change. And we really saw a need in this because scientists sometimes only have the responsibility to publish their work for journals or teach their classes as professors, but they don't really see themselves or have the time or funding even to do public outreach. So we see ourselves as the middleman to be the people to communicate what the scientists are doing with the general public. And on our website, our goal is that if the B high school sophomore student is unable to understand what we have on our website, it's probably too complicated. So we try to really simplify it. And we also have a meme page where we make things more entertaining with climate communications. Before I go into the memes, we also have value groups. And on the website, we have really individualized pages on how certain communities or people who care about certain issues are all part of the issue of climate change, but also part of the solutions. So our interns have been helping us write the pages, interviewing people in their communities, and seeing how people like farmers, doctors, the military, parents, basically anyone, if you're a person, climate change affects you. And we're trying to really narrow that down to show how people can also work within their communities and be part of the solution together. This is just a little bit about what we did pre-COVID. We had professor panels. We had the CEO of a gaming company come one time to UC Irvine to do a talk about how he's using gaming and VR to show climate solutions, which is a really cool event. We've also gone into K-12 classrooms to give presentations. And right now, some of our interns are helping us put together some lesson plans and games for kids. So when in the future, we can go back into classrooms, we can have people have like set up worksheets for them to do. And we've also done some boothing events, some climate information posters, so that when we do events in New York or when we had people in LA, we'd go to like Pershing Square to do events with kids and anyone who comes by to the table. My favorite project is the Climate Memes project that we have. I know Earth Hacks and Sanjana were going to collaborate with us with some of the memes, but the goal of the meme page, Climate Memes, is to educate the public on sustainability solutions and facts about climate change and inspiring them to take action. So again, we don't want it to be overly complicated information. We want it to be relatable and memeable so that the information gets spread online in a funny way. And sometimes humor is a good way to break the ice and just have people talk about complicated issues with one another. Because I think sometimes people will be uncomfortable talking about the impacts of climate change, or they don't want to really get into the science, but if people just share memes with their friends, that's a good way to start the convo about climate. And then to get all these projects together, we currently have some Columbia students and UC Irvine students helping us with the whole organization, but we also have interns. They're either working professionals or college students, some high school students who have qualified, who are part of our certificate program. So it's a 12-week program of articles and videos on climate change. And then we have Columbia students who are mentors for discussion calls every week. So we talk about climate justice, solutions, science, and policies together. They work on projects to share the information that they're learning through the program with their own communities. Right now, we're having them create some videos and zines. So we'll be publishing those online soon to have like really creative projects on what's happening with our climate. And we also have a weekly happy hour where we have a guest speaker every week talk about their work. And sometimes they're like leaders in Sunrise or scientists or someone in the climate industry who talks with our interns and lets them know different opportunities for work in the future. And really, we want to create a network of climate leaders worldwide so that they can keep taking action in their communities. And I think people who are within the communities are the best communicators to tell the people that they know what they're learning. And we really want people to have hands-on experience by talking with one another and doing research in their own neighborhood to see what solutions are possible and what are the barriers happening right now that are preventing us from having these climate solutions move forward. Just a little bit about our interns. We have them all over the world right now from 7 different countries, and some of them so far have worked out with their school to receive college credit. So if you're interested, I'll give you my email at the end. Our next round of the program starts in October. It's totally free. You get a mentor who will discuss the issues with you, and you get to create all these fun projects to share with your community. That's my info on Climatepedia. I have other info like on my research if we want to go into that too. I think we have time. But do people have questions about our projects or climate communications in general?
Okay, I guess we can move on for now and get to questions later.
Okay. I'll just go into my climate music, I guess. I wasn't sure what people wanted to focus on. But my current research right now is data sonification. I took a data sonification class at Columbia. It was just one of my electives and looked like a fun thing to do. There were only 5 of us in our class. And it wasn't necessarily a climate class. We had a mixture of both science and music students. But I decided that I wanted to integrate paleoclimate and past climate data sets to see how can we listen to the climate, and maybe if there's data that's inaccessible for people, if somebody can't physically see the graphs, how can we make music out of it and show the different patterns through sound. So I said before, paleoclimatology is a tenet of earth science when we look into the past to understand the present. So a lot of climate modelers will also use paleoclimate to figure out past patterns and then see what unnatural patterns now are we supposed to expect in the future. So I used several data sets when I was creating the music. 2 of the most prominent greenhouse gases right now are CO2 and methane. And I used ice core data, the delta O18, so that's the oxygen isotope ratio data. And that can be found in ice cores, rocks, ocean sediments, or corals. But the most complete data set that I could find was from the Greenland Ice Core Project. And then I put all the data together in Python, and I used digital sound synthesis and processing through a thing called RTC Mix. And a little bit into the weeds of the different data sets that I used. The most complete data sets we have are over 800,000 years. And you can see that with solar radiation, that's insolation, carbon dioxide, and methane. And then I also thought it would be interesting, not for the full song, just for like some little snippets, to also get the ice core data and data on carbon emissions. Because after the pre-industrial revolution, you could really hear in the song that I made that emissions went up and spiked really quickly. So before we listen to all my music, I'll do a quick overview of the different components of the data. We have solar insolation, which is incoming radiation from the sun, and that's controlled by the Milankovitch cycles. So you have eccentricity over 96,000 years, obliquity over 41,000 years, and precession over 21,700 years. And those are long-term spatial variations. And sometimes like climate deniers will say, oh, climate change is natural. It's always been caused by the sun. But while that's true that natural climate variability has been driven by the sun in the past, we also have human activity, which is really accelerating the rate of warming right now. So we'll hear that later on in the song. That's just all the data sets put together, and that's the one of the ice cores that's used for the data. All right, hopefully we can hear it here. This one's CO2 data and insolation, so we can hear how CO2 has been naturally influenced by the patterns in the sun. So if you're wearing headphones right now, the left ear will be CO2, the right ear will be insolation. I learned how to animate and do direct quantifications of the data with RTC mix. You can see right here, you get that big spike, and that's due to human activity and is not natural. More of the specifics, if you're interested in data sonification, I use the Savitsky-Golay filter, also known as the Savgol filter. And it's basically to smoothen out the data so it didn't sound so bumpy or have too many clicks in between. And you subtract the average insolation from every insolation point and then take the absolute value so that the many highs with zeros in between sound a little bit better. And it's smoothened out so that you don't get a really jagged noise. And then I decided to get the methane and average insolation data to also show how methane's driven by levels or the radiation from the sun. This one actually follows it really, really well. And it gets really high for just like that very last note because humans have been on this planet for just such a short amount of time, but we've made such a significant difference on methane levels. Next, I'm going to show you the glacial cycles and solar insolation. And note that we only have about 100,000 years of the data from the ice cores. And delta O18, that's the oxygen isotope ratio that reflects the amount of rainfall, and it's also a proxy for temperature. So we can see here through the new song that the glacial cycles are also controlled by the insolation from the sun over different periods of time through the different ice ages in Earth's history. It can also be a proxy for CO2. So as carbon decreases here, temperature also decreases. And then again, you can see that huge spike that's not natural. And last but not least, before I do the longer song, we can also hear the greenhouse gases, CH4 and CO2, paired up with human carbon emissions since the year 1751. And that's not as far back as we have human emission data, but normally, at least when I was working at NASA, we mark the Industrial Revolution as around the year 1840. So after 1840, you really start to see the spike in emissions. But scientists have said that we have had other emissions from human activity before the Industrial Revolution, such as just like people going around on ships, and even the start of colonization has sometimes been a marker of some human activity in data sets. But we'll hear this one. I tried to make the sound a little bit like a car engine. Oh, no. Sorry if you hear the cars honking outside. I'm in New York City, so you hear a lot of that too. And last but not least, I wanted to show a mixture of all the different data sets. So we have insolation, methane, and CO2. And I actually wrote a poem for a different class to put it all together. And it's supposed to be an open letter to climate deniers who deny that these new emissions are not natural and caused by human activity. Dear climate deniers, I envy you. I envy you. I would love to live a carefree life where sea levels are not rising, extreme weather is not on the rise, and my future children are guaranteed a safe, healthy world. I contemplate what my life would be like if I believed that humans did not have the power to alter the climate, that we had abundant fossil fuels that would have no effect on the atmosphere, that the most marginalized communities are not already in so much pain. I get it. Once you open the door and accept the reality of the climate crisis, you can't turn back. You go down a deep rabbit hole and cannot ignore the world's pains. I envy you. But hope you realize that you're not as privileged as you may think. Someday, I hope you'll understand that climate change affects us all before it's too late. Dear climate deniers, I envy you. I envy you. The most marginalized communities already have so much pain. The most marginalized communities already have so much pain. And at the very end, you'll hear, again, the levels going really, really high up. So I'm hoping to work with some other graduate students at Columbia to make this more of an exhibit and to create more sounds. I do have a Vimeo, so I can send that in the chat after. It just has this one song plus a data sonification that I made with breathalyzer data. And I actually choreographed a figure skating routine to that. If you'd like to see that later, I'll link the social media links there. And through these projects, I'd like to show that we have the power to reverse this trend, but right now humans are having this significant impact and it really isn't natural. You can hear the natural waves in the sun. By the very, very end, you get that really high pitch. So it's still a work in progress, but we want to communicate with people that although humans have caused this drastic change, we also have the power to reverse this if we take immediate action to cut our emissions in half by the year 2030. So that's pretty much it for my research. If you're interested in getting in touch with me, my email is gianna@climatepedia.org. You can check out our free climate literacy curriculum. It's totally open sourced at climatepedia.org. And we have our meme page, Climate Memes. It's more active on Instagram, but we also have a Twitter and a Facebook page to follow us on. So we can take questions now. And I'll find that link for the Vimeo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gianna. That was fantastic. So it looks like Molly Patterson put a question in the chat, but I think that you already addressed it. If you have a website or social media where they can follow to listen to these in particular again and follow your work in the future. So any other information on social media you'd like to share?
Those are the main sites. Let me just find the link for the Vimeo site.
Sure.
That's aside from it's just my personal Vimeo that has the data there.
Sure, and we can send that out to participants after this as well. So Adrienne Lee posted a question in the chat asking, what are your future plans?
For my future plans. So right now I'm hosting the 12-week certificate program with our interns from around the world. So we have 4 other Columbia students who are helping me run the program, mentor people, facilitate the discussions, and help put together all the projects that the interns turn in just to share on our social media channels and on our website. There's a dog out there. I'm hoping maybe to go back to school again in the future to pursue a PhD. But for now, at least for another year or 2, I'd like to continue with Climatepedia. Fingers crossed that we have funding to continue to do this full time at this scale. If not, I'm just looking for other opportunities in data sonification or climate communications. but my master's ends in October officially, even though our classes are over, but we have like a once a week professional development class that goes with an internship. So my internship is just my own organization, Climatepedia, where I'm working with some other students through my master's.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone or anything you'd like to share? Okay, and I guess with that, we conclude another session of ESW Talks. So thank you so much, Gianna, for sharing all of that. It's so interesting how many different things you're working on at the same time. And I was just thinking while listening to all of this, like, it's so insanely cool. I never would have thought to, make music out of climate data especially, but that's a really novel and a really powerful way to communicate kind of the urgency of the situation we're in. So major kudos to you. Thank you again. To all the participants, we will follow up with you guys over email, make sure that everything goes up, and then we will also be posting this recording later. So everyone have a great weekend, and we hope to talk to you again all soon. Thanks. Bye.
And I'll email you that other link so that you can share with everyone.
Perfect. Will do.